Right, but the issue that we're running into today, especially with the new Universal Ordinary Magisterium since the Council, the problem is that it has been the Pope explicating what the Council taught in the most heretical ways possible when it comes to interreligious dialogue.
Okay, so but now you just deny Vatican I. If the Pope is teaching heresy since Vatican I or since Vatican II, that would be 70 years of the Roman See teaching and implementing heresy. That would deny Vatican I.
Well, I don't deny Vatican I, okay? So let's put that to bed.
I know you don't, but by saying that Rome teaches heresy for 70 years denies the teaching of Vatican I that the Roman See cannot err and will not err until the end of the world.
Right. It's a mystery. This is one of the things about the SSPX.
Well, I thought you didn't want to turn your brain off. I thought you didn't want to turn your brain off. Now it sounds like it's a mystery.
Well, right. So...
but couldn't every single person who has a disagreement or a schism with Rome claim an extremis and the same excuse?
I mean, theoretically, could they? Yeah. Whether or not I mean, you know.
Do you accept the 17 code only, or do you accept the 1983 code?
No, 83 code. The 83 code is pretty generous, actually, with all of this stuff. I mean, not only, like I said, should there be hearings about this, but also the intention on the part of the consecrator needs to be taken into account, because according to the 1983 Code of Canon Law, if the consecrator believes that there is a state of necessity in the church, and the society has been cataloging that for decades now, that there is a state of necessity in the church, then that bishop that makes the consecrations operating under that idea does not incur the full penalty of excommunication. It is lessened according to the 1983 Code of Canon Law.
But couldn't every single person who has a disagreement or a schism with Rome claim an extremis and the same excuse?
I mean, theoretically, could they? Yeah. Whether or not I mean, you know, I think that they would be on dubious grounds to do that. I do think that the society...
Well, how is the society's grounds not dubious, but any other person's grounds just de facto dubious?
Well, I don't know if it would be de facto dubious. I guess it would have to be judged on a case-by-case basis. Certainly the state of necessity doesn't give you license to do anything. And it's very clear that the bishops and the leadership of the Society of St. Pius X were doing this not just because they wanted to, but because there is a state of necessity for the society to have bishops to be able to confer the sacraments to the faithful that want genuinely Catholic sacraments and teaching and schools for their kids.
Okay, but the state of necessity there, I mean, I thought Rome, according to Vatican I, is what ensures that we would not fall into that situation. So how is it that a French society of bishops decides what the state of necessity is for the universal church?
True. Well, I mean, I do think it's one thing where like the church isn't going to come out and say, hey, by the way, we're in a state of necessity now, so anything goes. I think that's kind of like a part of the state of necessity itself. And this particular state of necessity that we find ourselves in today. But there was a point that I was going to make. Did you mention something about canon code or canon law? It slipped my mind.
Well, again, yeah, that's fine. You can come back, but let me ask it this way. Have you by chance read Vatican I? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Just curious.
That is exactly the point that I was going to make. So on the one hand, right, you're saying, and I think very, very truly, that Peter is the proximate rule of faith. Being in communion with Peter is obviously a good thing to be in. With that said, Vatican I also states in Pastor Eternus of the 18th of July of 1860, which is the papal bull or the doctrine proclamation on papal infallibility, it says that the Holy Spirit was not given to Peter and his successors that they might make known new doctrine, but that they might saintly safeguard and faithfully expound the deposit of faith which has been handed down from Christ and the apostles.
Yeah, but who's
yeah, as not supposed to have new doctrines. And then, of course, in 1988, the the papal bull excommunicating the society, Ecclesia Dei Afflicta, in that document, John Paul II says that Vatican II taught new doctrines. So how is this possible? How is it possible that Vatican I says we can't teach new doctrines and that the Pope's infallibility is not given to him to teach new doctrines? And then on the other hand, we have John Paul II saying, hey, there's new doctrines in Vatican II. And by the way, if you don't accept those, we're excommunicating you.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that,
Right.
but I mean, to me, it doesn't really seem to justify the position of the SSPX. It rather justifies the position that papal teaching, papal dogma actually contradicts. Because if you look at Vatican I, it's very clear in multiple places that you're bound not just to the extraordinary magisterial teaching, but also to the universal ordinary magisterium. And when I was in the SSPX, the thing that eventually got me to leave was recognizing this very point. For example, canonizations, and it's not just canonizations, you could extend it to a lot of other things. When I had that debate with Father Post, he had to come to the position that, well, he wanted to admit that canonizations would fall under magisterium, be it universal or whatever. I think you'd have to say it's universal because the whole church is going to honor these saints. But how could it be the case that John Paul II could be called a saint and that be part of the universal magisterium? So he was in the position, for example, in 2006 and 7 of saying that that can never happen. It's not possible. But it illustrates one element of the universal ordinary magisterium, that you can't deny Rome's past 70 years of what they've taught and promulgated under the guise of saying, I'm only bound by what's, quote, universal or what's extraordinary magisterium. So I'm curious because there's 4 statements in Denzinger and statements outside of Denzinger and papal encyclicals that illustrate many, many times over that you're actually bound to all of the Roman See's teachings and their disciplinary measures, not just the ones that you decide are extraordinary.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, governance, teaching, is faith, morals, governance, and teaching.
Well, so then how would you reject Vatican II?
Well, and this is precisely the point, right? I mean, when you look at Vatican II and you look at the time, there was the Ottaviani intervention. Cardinal Ottaviani was a very traditionalist, conservative cardinal in the church at the time, and he had raised some serious concerns about some of the new teachings in Vatican II.
Yeah, but he's not Rome, so it really doesn't matter, though.
No, sure, he's not Rome, but as a part of this, Cardinal Felici issued a theological note attached to Vatican II, basically saying that everything here in this document, everything in Vatican II, is not extraordinary teaching unless it otherwise states that there's a doctrine or dogma.
Well, but wait a minute. So Cardinal Felici, who would be fallible, is then the ultimate interpreter of the infallible teachings of Vatican II?
Well, right. This is, again, a part of the problem with it. And also, one of the hallmarks that we're seeing from Rome is you have to accept Vatican II specifically. You have to accept the reforms of the last 70 years. There is no such test for orthodoxy as to whether or not you adhere to Trent or the Council of Florence or Vatican I. There's absolutely no mention of the previous 20 ecumenical councils. It's only Vatican II that is being called into question. And specifically with these new excommunications of the SSPX bishops, it is specifically about the acceptance of Vatican II. And at the time, the bishops, the fathers of the council, didn't think that they were changing church teaching. I mean, if you even read Sacrosanctum Concilium and a lot of the texts of the council, it says that things like Gregorian chant is supposed to hold primacy in the church's worship, that you're not supposed to tamper with or change the liturgy and be introducing all of these novelties. That was the spirit of Vatican II. That wasn't actually in the council. And so there's a lot of debate, even among us traditionalists, about, was it Vatican II itself, or was it the spirit of Vatican II, or the implementation of Vatican II? It's very confusing, and there's a lot of different positions on this.
Okay, well, Nostra Aetate, do you think that Muslims, Christians, and Jews worship the same God? Is that, I mean, you said a minute ago that John Paul admitted that it has new teachings, but now it sounds like a hermeneutic of continuity. So which one is it in your mind?
Now, that's what was tried. I think we're seeing the hermeneutic of continuity fail in real time. I think that's kind of the point of what.
So you would then say that Vatican II is not magisterial teaching?
I would say that Vatican II needs clarification, and I'm not the only one saying that. There was also dubia introduced very recently under the pontificate of Pope Francis from Cardinal Burke and several others. I think Cardinal Mueller was involved with it as well. There have been dubia against a lot of the teaching in Vatican II lodged not only at the time of the council with the Ottaviani intervention, but like I said, even as recently as the end of Pope Francis's pontificate, we were
Yeah,
still waiting on
but I mean,
response to the.
it's very common, for example, in Roman Catholic apologetics, when one's debating a Protestant, to point out that you need the magisterium to have certitude and finality on these key issues that divide people. So now you're saying that there could be this magisterium for 70 years that is totally unclear, and now there needs to be a fallible council or clarification that would then clarify what's supposed to be the dogma?
Well, right, and it's not just that it's unclear; it's that the teachings of Vatican II, some of them are explicitly opposed to what had been taught prior to. You
But
can
I'm
look at
asking,
things.
I understand, but I'm asking an epistemic question of, I thought the purpose of magisterium was to provide the certitude, but now you're
Mm.
saying that we need another commission that would most likely be fallible to clarify the infallible. So how is this not an infinite regress that the papacy was supposed to solve?
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, we're living in a crisis. This is a crisis of faith. It's a crisis of church
Okay,
teaching and
but
discipline.
if you read Vatican One, does it speak as
Mhm.
if there could be a situation where not only not Rome teaching error for one instance, but Rome teaching error in any dogmatic way in terms of not just
For one thing.
extraordinary but also universal ordinary for 70 plus years?
No, this was absolutely not. This is unheard of. This was barely even thought about. I
No,
mean, you
no.
can look at
But I'm saying, does
some of
Vatican One make it
the.
possible? The way it's worded
No,
about Rome cannot teach error. It's absolutely
right.
impossible because it would deny not just the dogmatic infallible teaching office, it would also undermine the point of, focal unity, which is the Roman See and the Roman Pontiff.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. And like I said,
Well,
it's.
you agree with Vatican One?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I accept
Okay,
all
but
of
if
the evidence.
Vatican One is saying that Rome cannot teach error, and you're saying Rome has taught error for about 70 years, I don't understand.
Mhm. Well, this is a part of the crisis, right? And so there is a position that is further to the right or more based in trad pilled or whatever, which is sedevacantism, which is the idea that we haven't actually had a pope since 1958, and that all of the acts that have been coming out of Rome since that period of time have been coming from an anti-pope, which is why that's how they explain
Yeah,
how there
yeah.
is this
I was a
contradiction.
sedevacantist. I know. I have all the Seder books.
Nice. I've got one of Father Chicada's books over here. Was it
The
the
blue
work
one?
of, work of
Is
Human
it the
Hands?
blue one of the, well, there's I'm thinking the Radecki brothers, not Cicada.
Oh, the Diamond Brothers?
No, the Radecki brothers are a separate double,
Okay.
but I'm familiar with the Dunn brothers too. So I read all that stuff. I used to be in the Seder circles back in 2007, 8 as well, because I was going to the SSPX, but I had the private
Uh,
opinion that I was sedevacantist. So
sure.
the problem with the Seder position, though, is different in that if you read C. Delegas of Pius XI, he wrote a letter, an allocution that dealt with the old Catholics. And in that
Mm,
letter, he explains that the error that the old Catholics have is absolutely identical both to the SSPX, in my view, and the sedevacantist position, that you could have a significant, massive alteration not just in the infallible teaching office in terms of erring of the Roman See, but also the fundamental change in the structure of the church itself. And the thing that convinced me that Seda was impossible was not just the fact that Vatican I says, I think twice, that the Holy Spirit will guide the church through the Roman See to have infallible successors until the end of time, which negates the possibility of there being 70, 80, 100 years of no Roman See or no successor. That's
mm,
vastly different from a vacant see for a couple years when there's the election of a new pope. This would be
mhm.
to fundamentally change the public universal structure of the church such that now everything that's been done for 70 years is invalid. It's not just a matter of losing the infallible teaching office, it's also the public visible structure of the church that's now lost, because now it's just underground bishops, which are all fighting with each other and electing their own popes. You become a conclavist after sedevacantism. So
Yeah.
it's a vast denial of multiple aspects of Vatican I. And I guess I'm just trying to say that these are the issues that led me directly into Orthodoxy, because there is no solution to 70 years of dogmatic error from Rome. And don't you think that the excommunication signifies this final sort of like reaffirmation that Rome is not interested in tradition at all? In fact, they're the enemies of it.
Oh, did I lose you? You still there? They're the enemy of tradition. Is that what you said?
I said, does this not signify, as it signified to me back when I was in the SSPX and we had this same sort of row and thing going on with under Benedict, when there was no reconciliation and we didn't actually get a return to the Latin Mass? Does this not signify that Rome has no interest and will have no interest in returning to tradition, especially since, for example, there's about 5 papal statements that Vatican II's reforms are, quote, magisterial. Francis just said it in 2017. He said all the liturgical revolutions and reforms are magisterial and cannot be undone. They're irreformable, he says. So does that not tell you that Rome is not interested in you and the trads, and that they have moved on?
Yeah, well, that's explicitly like what they said a couple of weeks ago. I think Pope Leo himself said that we just need to, quote, move forward. And so, the Society of St. Pius X did that. They consecrated new bishops. They moved forward. And we'll see whether or not the current Roman authorities can move forward, because I
Do
think
you,
that this is going to be a stumbling block for them
do
over the
you
next.
accept John Paul as a saint?
I have no issues with that at all. No, I mean, I think it's totally possible, probable, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not probable, but certainly possible that he's in heaven. And, if Peter
Well, not
has
that
the
is he in
ability
heaven,
to
but is he
find
a
a way.
saint? So that's more than just being in heaven. There's
But
plenty of people in heaven that
that's
are not
what
saints.
being a saint is. Being a saint is the Holy See's approbation that this person is in fact in heaven, and it is totally okay for you to pray for them. But even before people are canonized saints, there's usually a cult of that person, of people praying to this person for a miracle or for some sort of spiritual
Right, but if
favor.
you said that you admitted that John Paul II admits that there's changes in Roman Catholic doctrine, and John Paul II, more than anyone else after Vatican II, implemented and did all of those radical actions, I'm just wondering, how could he still be a saint if you're saying he admits to there being different doctrines that he promulgates?
Sure. And again, I get it. I understand that I am like, and there aren't that many of us like SSPX influencers. There's like 2 of us, right? There's like me and Kennedy Hall. And then the rest is like all sedevacantists. We got Orthodox and then the papists, like the super Pope respecter on X or whatever that's going around dunking on people. And I've got something to say about that in a bit. But um, the way that it used to be is that saints were supposed to be elevated in the minds of the faithful as a demonstration of some sort of heroic virtue that they had in their lives, whether it was that they wouldn't compromise the faith, they wouldn't bow before a heretic, or they're supposed to have some sort of virtue that was demonstrated to a heroic
Sure,
level.
but you can't be a heretic and be a saint.
Uh well, no. If you're a heretic, if you
And you
are
just said John Paul
genuinely a heretic,
II, you said John Paul taught different doctrines according to you and him.
he himself said that Vatican II taught new doctrines.
And he taught all those things and implemented them more than anyone else.
Yes, he did. That is
So
correct.
how could you be a heretic and be a saint? Or is he just a material heretic?
Is he just a material heretic? It's possible. I mean, I can't judge him. I don't know.
So in the
whether or
Roman
not
system, I can be a material heretic
or-
and I can participate in other religious ceremonies and Assisi gatherings and go to mosques and pray in mosques and in synagogues, which in the first 1,000 years of
No.
Christianity, you're excommunicated if you pray in the
Yeah,
synagogues.
no, you're not supposed to do that. That is not a demonstration of heroic virtue by any stretch. I mean, my parents, when they were young, before Vatican II, when they would walk to school, they were told by their teachers not even to look at Protestant churches, that it was a sin to even look at a Protestant church. And they would cross the street to walk on the other side of the sidewalk to avoid even walking on the same side of the street as a Protestant church. That was back in the late 1950s when this was going on. And of course, now
Yeah,
we have religious liberty,
Right.
ecumenism. We've got the meeting of Assisi. We've got the Pope today out at some migrant facility. I mean,
Right.
God knows, it's a mess.
Well,
Uh,
so you mentioned that you do adhere to the 1983 Canon Law, and it has in Canon 752 that anytime the Supreme Pontiffs or the College of Bishops are teaching on a matter of faith and morals, even if it's not ex cathedra or dogma, even if you privately disagree, it says religious submission of intellect and will must be given to those teachings. So this is what they've been teaching for the last 70 years. How do you reconcile disagreeing with it when your canon law says you have to submit with with your intellect and your will?
Yeah, this is something that I would be out of my depth. I'm going to reread this just so that I can consume
Sure.
it again. Let's see. While the assent to faith is not required, a religious submission of intellect and will is to be given to any doctrine which either the Supreme Pontiff or the College of Bishops, exercising their authentic magisterium, declare upon a matter of faith or morals, even if they do not intend to proclaim that doctrine by definitive act. What is that supposed to mean?
So that means ordinary teaching, right? So you have three strata in your
Like, if
in,
you're doing your ordinary teaching, then they should have it in their mind to be proclaiming the doctrine of the church. How do you
yeah, but
accidentally?
what I'm saying is that you're not the one that gets to decide whether they're teaching the doctrine of the church, even if you privately think that they're wrong. If they're teaching in the ordinary way about faith and morals, your job is to submit with intellect and your will. So
Yeah,
this was the whole reason why, in my
yeah. Well,
situation, I couldn't reconcile SSPX with these things.
yeah, and I think that this is a sloppy canon. I think that this deserves another look. Granted, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a canon lawyer. I'm not a priest.
But
I've
what's
been
sloppy
trained.
about it, because I mean, you guys have three
How
strata.
do
You have,
you how
yep.
do you accidentally intend to proclaim a doctrine by definitive act? How do you accidentally do that? How do you? I
What are you
mean,
talking about?
all of the
What are you talking about accidentally? This is just saying when they're
I'm
not.
saying, even it says even though they do not intend to proclaim that doctrine by definitive act, how is it possible that they could teach a doctrine in a definitive act essentially accidentally
That's not what
without
it's saying.
intending to do that?
It's talking about normative teaching. So like your bishop, when your bishop teaches in a homily, or if he says
Mm,
our church is going to do this or that in pertaining to faith and morals, so perhaps not about, the church's purchasing of a parking lot or something like that. But when it comes to faith and morals, or the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, right? The duty of the
mhm,
Catholic is to submit to the ordinary teaching, even if it's not infallible. And this is because there's three strata: there's extraordinary, universal
mhm,
ordinary, and ordinary. And this is
yep.
saying that even when it's not infallible, you have the duty to submit with intellect and will.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that if it didn't you know, necessitate me shutting off my reason, if it didn't necessitate shutting my brain off to do so. I mean,
Yeah, but
again,
isn't that
it's
what they told? I mean, you're familiar with Dollinger at Vatican One, right? Because Dollinger had a lot of the same qualms and holdups, and they said you can either submit your intellect and will to the ruling of the Supreme Pontiff in Vatican One, or you can, follow your reasoning process, which makes you doubt Vatican One. So I'm just saying that's an example that the Roman Catholic attitude is not that you get in the final analysis your private interpretation of canon law or the excommunications. It's to submit with intellect and will.
right. But the issue that we're running into today, especially with the new universal ordinary magisterium since the council, the problem is that it has been the Pope explicating what the council taught in the most heretical ways possible when it comes to interreligious
Okay,
dialogue.
so but now you just deny
Uh,
Vatican One. If the Pope is teaching heresy since Vatican One or since Vatican Two, that would be 70 years of the Roman See teaching and implementing heresy. That would deny Vatican One.
Well, I don't deny Vatican One. Okay, so let's put that to
I
bed.
know you
I
don't,
accept
but
Vatican One.
by saying that Rome teaches heresy for 70 years denies the teaching of Vatican One that the Roman See cannot err and will not err until the end of the world.
Right. It's a mystery. This is one of the things about the SSPX
Well, I thought you didn't want
position.
to turn your brain off. I thought you didn't want to turn your brain off. Now it sounds like it's a mystery.
Well, right. So when it comes to like me making some sort of judgment on the person of the Pope or his personal holiness or what it is that I think his intentions are. I kind of suspend judgment on that. It's like, okay, we are.
But you've
in an
already made that
unprecedented-
judgment. If you think he's a saint, you've already made that judgment.
If I think who's a saint, Leo the 14th,
John Paul, right? You said.
I said it's possible that he's in heaven, and I hope that he's in heaven. And I think
but if you're
that
Roman Catholic, you have to believe that he is, because unless you want to say
Sure.
canonizations are optional or can be fallible, you have to believe that he's a saint.
I think that we should be taking another look at the process of canonization. I mean, I'm sure you're aware, maybe some of the listeners are not, the term devil's advocate was a real position that was held in the tribunals for deliberating canonizations. And the devil's advocate used to present evidence that would show that the candidate in question is not, in fact, a saint, that, there's all of these personal problems and doctrinal problems or whatever. They abolished that. They abolished that to canonize Jose Maria Escriva.
Right, which solidifies Vatican II.
Correct. And when you look at a lot of these canonizations of Pope John the 23rd, Pope Paul the 6th, John Paul II, we know that they're going to canonize Pope Francis. That's totally going to happen.
Right.
They are canonizing the council. That is what they're doing.
Yeah,
They're
exactly. That's what I was saying
canonizing-
about Jose Maria Escriva. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, being in a crisis, and the books are open for anybody to go look at, right? You can go read the Syllabus of Errors by Pius IX. You can.
No, I
read
know.
Vatican
I
II.
cite those all the time. I think they're
You come
absolutely.
to a certain point in time when the Vatican definitively changed what they taught. They changed their discipline. They're the ones that changed.
I agree, absolutely. But here's the thing, though. Like, do you?
I know you would go back to 1054.
Well, do you think that? Do you think that canonizations are part of the universal ordinary magisterium?
If a canon lawyer told me that was the case, I'd probably believe it. I don't know. I haven't.
Well, I mean, if they're not, the problem is that we could conceivably doubt anybody, right? Could we doubt Saint Augustine?
I wouldn't. I don't think that you
Well,
would.
I mean,
but
if
again,
I'm a Protestant, I'm asking. Let's say I'm a
canonization-
Protestant. I'm saying, hey, can I have the right to doubt, Pius X? Can I doubt Augustine?
I would say no. I would say no.
So then you
but
can't doubt.
again,
Then you
the form
can't
of
doubt.
canonization
Right.
changed.
So then
They no longer have the same safeguards in place.
But it doesn't matter what the safeguards are if the promise of Peter is that the universal ordinary magisterium is also protected, and if canonizations are part of that, then you can't doubt Jose Maria Escriva or John Paul II.
Right. Like I said, they're probably in heaven, and God bless them. Pray for me, please. Pray for all of us. But yeah, I mean, like there are issues with Jose Maria Escriva. He would allow communists to be members of Opus Dei at a time when being a communist would get you latae sententiae excommunicated. So
have you looked at the CIA funneling money into Opus Dei? That's a big part of that.
1971 it began. It's in the Operation Gladio book by what's his face, Paul Williams, I think, wrote about that. And I've got a long laundry list of issues with Opus Dei. But here's the thing, right? It's like we've got this issue happening where you've got German bishops that are being disobedient themselves. They're not adhering to the doctrine of the church. They're not adhering to what the Pope
and they're
is
not
saying.
excommunicated.
They're not excommunicated, and nobody is claiming that they are outside of the church. And there is something that I do want to point out to people like Pope Respecter or these like super ultramontanists that are dunking on the society for getting excommunicated and congratulations on your new Protestant sect, asshole, burn in hell, like E. Michael Jones, the way that he's going about this. Canon 383 of the 1983 Code of Canon Law says, this is of the bishop, of course, but in exercising his pastoral office, the bishop is to act with humanity and charity to those who are not in full communion with the Catholic Church, and he should foster ecumenism as it is understood by the church. And it's like, are any of these Pope respecting people following Canon 383? No, they're not. They're being assholes. And they're dunking on people and laughing about burning in hell. And then there is an excess on the other side. There are people that say, good, I don't want to be in communion with Rome. And I think both positions are in error. I mean, this is a wound and it hurts. It hurts, as a member of the society to see good, faithful Catholic priests and bishops being called non-Catholic, schismatic, that you're
Yeah,
disrespectful and
but
all of it.
but
It's hurtful.
in the Roman system, especially post Vatican I, isn't it Rome that decides who is in fact in communion with Rome?
Yeah, I would imagine so. But again, there's like explicit like criteria that you can use to judge these things. You can look at the
Yeah,
doctrine.
but who's the judge of that? Rome is the judge of that, not
Rome should be the
not the
judge of that.
Lefebvre, not Fillet, not any of those people.
And I think Rome is not doing a very good job. I think that they've got people. I mean, for example, they've got people in charge of the DDF that don't know how to properly excommunicate people. You don't know how to write up an order of excommunication properly. So,
Well, I
when
mean,
it
isn't
comes
that
to
dude a
all
gay?
of that
Didn't he
stuff,
write books about like butt stuff and kissing?
yeah,
Yeah,
Heal Me With Your Mouth, The Art of Kissing by Tuco Fernandez. That's the name of the book that everybody cites, of course. And it's disgusting from what I understand. But